So Dave, welcome to Quiet Excellence. You are somewhat partially to blame or to thank, I'm not sure which one, for inspiring this. One of your core values at Cornerstone is quiet excellence, and it got me thinking about the world we live in today. It seems like it's filled with a lot of people that like to talk about what they do, and fewer people that get down to the doing. And you're somebody that really just gets down to the doing, doesn't really talk a whole lot about yourself, and you're more concerned about the results than talking about the results. So, thanks for being willing to sit down with me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity to
Yeah,
spend some time with you. And
yeah,
like you said, I don't like to do much talking, so good luck to you here
yeah,
today.
yeah. My work is cut out for me.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to just start out with question I've had for you and a question I'm asking myself, right? Because I have ambitions. I want to be successful, but I also want to be grateful. I want to take in what I've been able to accomplish and actually enjoy my life. So how have you balanced the ambition, but also being grateful? Or how have you balanced being successful, but also enjoying the life that you have?
I guess for me, it's always been about staying focused and really giving everything I have to what I'm doing, whether I'm at work and building buildings or helping lead and manage and support team members, or if I'm at home watching one of my girls play softball. I really work hard at being present, being in the moment, and giving that everything I've got at that time. And so that's worked pretty well for me. But I could tell you it is hard at times when you have a lot going on to allow yourself the ability to do that. And so, especially in today's world where everything's electronic and you're getting, every anybody can get a hold of you at any minute of the day, 24/7, and so it really takes discipline in order to do that.
And speaking of discipline, one of the signs that I've seen in your office is discipline is freedom. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. Well, obviously that's kind of came out of I think it was Jocko
Yeah.
Willink. That's where that originated, but we've embraced that idea because it rings true for me personally and for our company. Is that if we stay disciplined and do the little things well, everything else becomes easier. And so we're focused at making sure we follow through, and we focus on all the little things that put us in a good place, so then we can be free to be dynamic and have time to read and react, and the other things that make us special as professionals in this business, and we can bring our creativity at that time. So as long as we're taking care of the little things and being disciplined there, it frees us up to do all the stuff we love to do at that point.
So that makes me think. So I did some research for this. So 0.04% of companies make it to an annual revenue of $100 million or more a year. And Cornerstone is in that camp in 20 years, right? Or under 20 years. And one of the things I've heard you say or heard some of your employees say is Dave's not concerned with hitting home runs. It's about hitting singles and doubles, making sure we're just nailing the basic stuff. Has that always been your approach? How Maybe tell me if that's always been your approach, and then how have you stewarded this company to be as successful as it has been?
I'd say it has been my approach, just because I felt like I always try to put myself on the other side of the equation. Like when we're dealing with customers and subcontractors, we all have a similar focus to achieve the goal together. And if one of those people in that mix is focused on hitting a home run for themselves, it usually doesn't translate to a success for everybody. And so we're super pleased with hitting for a very high average, having repeat business, and team members that stick around, subcontractors that want to work with us over and over again. And so we'd rather have a long career, a lot of singles, and a high average than hit some home runs and strike out all the time.
So I had the privilege of talking with a number of your employees for a 20th year anniversary video we produced for Cornerstone. And the thing that struck me is everybody that I spoke with spoke very highly of you. They talked about you as a leader that they truly wanted to follow. Or I think of Steve saying, I'm never going to retire. I'm going to die at this company. Like, that's how much I love working for Cornerstone or for Dave. I think everybody is thinking about, how do I become a better leader, a more dynamic leader? How do I become a leader that people want to follow? What has been your approach to leadership? Why do you think you don't have to coerce anybody, people want to follow the way that you're leading?
Boy, it's hard for me to hear that because I don't really see it that way. You know, I really try to take myself out of the equation. And so uh, team members really have a lot to offer. And if you give them a lot of freedom, the same freedom I would want to have in their shoes to do my business, to pursue a career and get better and stronger at what I'm doing. I really see my role as a support for that, to make sure that everybody's supported in a way that they can grow, and but also to step in front and take the bullets once in a while when the bullets are flying. I really look at our team, and my role and duty is to protect our team from collateral damage and things like that. And you know, construction can be a tough business like that. And I'm not going to protect them from growth that they need to have, but the silly stuff that they don't need to have. And so I think that's worked well for me. Everybody's got their own way of leading, and for me, I really an area. Well, I'd say the focus for me, just the way I was raised and what I saw, was steward leadership. You know, really looking at it. Some people see leadership as like a pyramid and the leader's on the top. And if you think about that flipped upside down, that's been more of the focus I see, is the higher you go, per se, really you're moving down and supporting more people. And you really have to give up a lot of, let's say, personal freedom when the higher you become in your leadership position. And it's a duty and a commitment, just like you as a father for your family.
Yeah.
It's no different in a business where you need to have a duty to support everybody who's committing themselves to the company and in that. So that's kind of the way I've seen it, and that's been successful for me.
How have you dealt with, right? There's obviously people want to be successful. They want to be in leadership positions. I was talking to a friend that said that there's Harvard MBAs that are raising their own private capital venture funds to buy their way to be a CEO.
Yeah.
So people want power, they want responsibility, but I don't think they think about the flip side, right? There is a lot more sacrifice, there's a lot more pressure, there's a lot more asked of you. What has been the flip side of success for you, where, yeah, it's great to be successful, but there's also a price you pay? What has been that price for you?
You know, I'd say first, I'd say the price has been very rewarding. So when I say these things, it's not a complaining or poor me. I think it's really, even though it's challenging, it's super rewarding. But I would say you really need to, like I said, give up personal, what might satisfy you in the moment. You know, like, for example, it might feel good in the moment to express yourself if you're angry and deal with people that way. But is that going to get you anywhere? Is that going to help that person grow? And so you really got to stop living in the moment, stop living for yourself, and think about what's good for the organization and the team members who are giving up a lot to be on that team. And so, when you talk about what am I giving up to be in that role, really, I can't think of anything except for maybe time. And I've gotten to a point now. I'm in my late 40s. I'm 54, and so I've really gotten to a point where time isn't really, I don't feel a pressing need to be anywhere at any certain time. I'm going to be where I need to be and support the people I need to support. You kind of, as you go along, you can manage time much more effectively. And somebody said it to me the other day, and it really resonated. He said, Dave, you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
maybe you've heard that before, but I hadn't, and I was like, that's something you learn as you go along, is you have to really pick where you spend your time, where you're going to have the biggest outcomes.
How have you, is it just life experience? Is it something you learn along the way? Or is there a way that people who aren't yet 54, how can we learn to spend our time better or on the right things? Because I heard this quote the other day that from Cal Newport. He says, it's impossible to fail at being busy. You will always succeed. But
Yes.
how can we make sure we are doing the right things?
That is something that's hard to learn, and the people who learn that at a younger age tend to be much more accomplished and successful in what they're doing. And I think it's to, for one, navigate through all the noise. There's distractions everywhere. And really, where do you want to spend your time? There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
Where do you want to spend your time? What's going to have the biggest, create the biggest outcome? And so when you're starting out younger in your pursuits, you're going to have to go through the grind to learn your craft. Very important you do that, and you commit the hours it takes to get really good at your craft. And part of that is not only the doing, but the listening, kind of the people skills side of that, and start honing in. And then once you've gone through that, you can be much more dynamic and more, let's call it strategic with how you spend your time. And that's been a hard thing, and it continually circles back. One of our kids is getting married this summer.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to the first kid of 4
Oh, cool.
that's getting married, and so I'm already feeling some stress and pressure for my time,
Yeah.
right? Because I already know, what it takes to do what I do, and
Yeah.
and this is going to challenge that. But on the same time, it's my kid. It's once in his life that he'll go through this, and I need to be there and support him. And so those are things you need to do, and you need to carve out the time for. So here, that's 6 months away. I'm already preparing for that. So when that time comes, I can just carve it out and not worry.
So, how have you taken, I think people who lead fulfilling lives, not just successful, but fulfilling lives, they are very intentional. They're proactive instead of reactive. And I think as any business leader, it's tempting to be reactive. There's always something you can be reacting to. There's always, there's the difference between the urgent and the important. How have you been able to focus on the important things and maybe ignore the unimportant but urgent things?
I mean, again, that is a daily decision you have to make, and oftentimes you go through periods where you're living in the let's call it firefighting mode, and you're wired. Most of us in our roles are wired to solve problems, and so if there's no problems to solve, you almost feel like you're useless at that point. So
Yeah.
sometimes you'll create your own problems just so you have something to solve. But I would say it just you have to find that time. You have to say, okay, what time of the day is where I can do that, or
Yeah.
what day of the week. For me, I'm just a super early morning person, and I started to get earlier and earlier as I went along, because construction in and of itself is an early business. So if I want to have that special quiet time in the morning, I have to get there super early. But I found that that's effective for me, so I can get the quiet time, get the old saying, on the business versus in the business time, get my head wired right, and then when the day starts and everybody else starts showing up, I can actually support them better. I can do the leading side of
Yeah.
it, and not get myself mired in details and things that really feel like they matter a lot, but that's that old saying, the 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
You want to spend your time doing the 20% that really matter.
Yeah, I've started getting up at 5:30 and having that quiet time from, before my son is awake, and um, having that time from about, it takes a little while to make the coffee and get
Yeah.
settled, but 6 to 7 is kind of, I know every day I'm going to get that hour, and that's really going to be thoughtful time where it feels like the world is still asleep in some
Yes.
sense, and so I can get that time to really think and plan and be strategic and not not react.
Yeah.
And then I can go throughout my day and feel like, okay, I got that hour in. that's a win.
Yeah, and your head's screwed on straight,
Yeah.
and you have a sense of more control,
Yeah.
even though you don't want to be controlling, but
Right.
you feel in control.
Even if the rest of the day goes to shit, I know at least I did that. One of the things I've been thinking about is making decisions, and not only making better decisions, but making faster decisions. Because there's been a number of decisions that I've had to make in my business recently, and I've realized it can be so easy to be slow to make decisions because you're being thoughtful, because you're thinking through scenarios. At a certain point, it crosses into just procrastination. You're just thinking, thinking, thinking. How have you found you've gotten better at decisions and then faster at decisions? Because I imagine there's countless decisions that you have to make every
Yeah.
day.
Well, experience is number one.
Yeah.
I'd say the more experience you accumulate, you're making mistakes all the time. And so you basically say, okay, I know I can't do that, or that, so I'm doing this.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then I think recognizing what's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to help you make a quick decision. If it's nothing that's that
Yeah.
consequential, and so that's important. And then I think also you have to, with the people around you, make sure they feel that they've been empowered to make decisions at their levels. You have to kind of gauge that, but the less decisions you have to make, others are making good decisions, that's going to put you in a better place too. Because the worst thing is a lot of young people that get elevated into management positions, it's kind of that control freak thing where they want to make every little decision because makes them feel powerful, but it stifles their growth and everybody around them. And so you get the analysis paralysis and things like that. So I'm probably sometimes too fast in making decisions to my own detriment sometimes where, it'll be like, oh, I wish I would have given that one the 24-hour rule, which I've tried to adopt in my life for, I'd call more emotional type decisions you have to make where, boy, that person sets you off and you really just want to go have it out with them. Do the 24-hour rule.
Yeah.
Business decisions, make sure you have some analytics to back support. Unless you're purely on experience, exactly to go that way. Have some analytics behind it, and then apply what's the worst thing that can happen, and move forward on the little things quickly. Because I think, especially when you're in a leadership role, people are seeking you for guidance to move forward, and you have to recognize this person or this group of people is dead in the water until you give them some direction.
Yeah.
And so, and one of my superintendents, Eric, who I really look up to, he's a very experienced, sharp guy. His saying is, "Wait is what broke the wagon," and that's true in construction. If you sit around and wait, nothing's happening, you're going to have problems. And so that speaks to decision making as well.
Yeah, because the decision to not make a decision is also a decision.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
And we think we're in this, we haven't made a decision, but yeah, life continues even if you have not
It
decided
does.
yet.
Yeah. Good point.
One of the things you've done really well from my perspective is you have very high expectations of people, but you also give them a lot of autonomy and freedom to carry out their role, and you have a lot of trust in people. Maybe tell me about that approach. Really high expectations. You expect people to really do their job well, but also you give them the freedom to go do that.
Yeah, it depends on the person, but I think what I like to do is because I remember what it was like coming up, and being micromanaged was just really a turnoff. And so if you hire the right people and team members, those are the people who need the autonomy because they're already driven. They already want to grow in their careers and their expertise. And so you need to give them the room to learn and grow that way. But you do need to hold them accountable, because you'll find within that, even though it might be an excellent team member, that they're making bad decisions, or decisions with high level of consequence should have been checked before they made them. And so you have to create some accountability there, let's call it, some bumpers to stay in that realm. And then another visual on that is somebody was explaining to me, it's like teaching somebody how to swim. You're you're holding onto the rope with them when they're in the water, and you're letting out a little more, a little more, a little more, and then pretty soon you drop it, and they're swimming just fine without you. And so, making sure that you give them the opportunity to grow, but also the ability to fail without it being huge consequence to the business or themselves, because that can stifle somebody too.
Yeah.
Small failure, okay. Big failure, hopefully we're not having too many of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So you brought up hiring the right people, and I think that's something your industry, construction, is specifically dealing with, but everybody deals with it, no matter what business you're in. You've made some unconventional hires that have been really smart hires. I think about Melissa, Vicky, both not from construction backgrounds, but you saw something in them. I think of Steve, who he was telling me he was working somewhere else, and you'd worked on Steve for, I don't know, a year or 2 years, and like, hey, when are you going to come work for me?
Yeah.
And so you have an ability to see something in people. What is it that you're looking for when you identify this person would be a really good fit, this would be a good hire?
Two people in an interview is two people lying to each other. And so I think that what I've really focused on is first set the resume aside and the experience, and okay, who is that person like really? Who are they from an integrity and honesty? Are they driven? Are they, Steve, who you keep bringing up, one of my superintendents here, who's awesome. He will tell you based on how somebody's walking up to the trailer if he's going to hire him or not. His last check is, their firm handshake. So he's got his little intangibles. And so what I'm always looking for is this a serious person? What's their body language like? Can you tell, you can kind of get a flavor of somebody just talking to them about stuff. That's the first test, is I really want to know that about them. What have they done in their lives that would give you an indication that they've been through some stuff and gotten through it and continued to excel. Once I know I got somebody like that, we can teach. They can grow experience here, have experiences, and grow here from that standpoint. Construction is a little bit different in that you don't have to have a degree necessarily to be working, whether it's in the field or on the general contractor side and management, supervision, but you have to, in general, have some toughness to you, some grit to be successful in this industry. And so really you're looking for those intangibles first. And if I can get those, and I know they embody our core values, now I'm going to check their experience. And sometimes, if you have two side by side and they both have the intangibles, now I'm looking at the experience. But I'll always hire those intangibles over the experience if the experience doesn't bring the core values. We just can't have anybody here at Cornerstone that doesn't have or share our core values, because they won't make it.
Yeah.
They probably make it a few weeks to a couple of months, but that's just not good for them. It's not good for us. And so we really kind of filter people based on our sense of do they embrace our core values.
I remember one of my favorite stories you told me is that hotshot executive you'd hired for a quick minute. Do you want to tell that story?
Yes. So we had a senior, let's just call him a senior manager, who'd come from a large competing company that I had known in the past from maybe 20 years ago working, and so I had a sense of his capabilities, but he'd been with us 3 or 4 months, maybe a little month or two longer, and he was just struggling to be effective. And he came into my office one day, and there was a sense that he wasn't quite meeting the mark, and he said, Dave, I'm going to resign. You guys just work too hard here, is the way he said it. Of course, he said, use some other colorful words in there. and I, for one, I was relieved, but for two, I was like, oh, would you have it any other way? I just don't understand any other
Yeah.
concept to, pursuing your career and work is it should be hard in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when you work out, you're a little bit sore, but it feels good.
Yeah.
Stretching your brain and your capabilities and your opportunities is a good thing.
Yeah.
And so that's the way we look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I really admire about you is your humility. So you drive a pickup from the 90s. You'd rather grill burgers here than go to a restaurant. How can people enjoy the successes that they've had without falling into the trappings of success?
I think a lot of that is how you're hardwired,
Yeah.
probably. I mean, if I'm in a social setting, it's because I have to be, and that's part of it. But I do think you have to realize that it's not about you. It can't be about you. If you think it's about you, then you're probably not seeing something. So it's rare for us, and this is something I always tell people on our leadership team I need to work on, is when we accomplish something, score a touchdown, let's say, I'm not, the celebration lasts a nanosecond, and then we're focused on the next, mountaintop that we're climbing towards. But I think that humility is just, it's hard for me to even talk about it just because I'm hardwired that way, Taylor. But I don't think anybody cares much for people who don't have humility.
Yeah.
So, and I've been around them, and I've had some, like when I was growing up and seeing them in leadership roles, and it's just such a turnoff. How could you? Nobody really wants to be around them. They're fun at parties or social events, but that's about it. So that's been my focus, is to be somebody that people value and would appreciate being around, that they know has their back, and they also know that whatever the company does isn't about me. Nobody wants to work at a company where it's about the owner, the president, or whatever the company. It's about them. They're the one making all the accomplishments. And so that's where the focus needs to be.
Was that attitude or that way of seeing life, was that taught to you growing up? Is that something you've learned along the way? How did you adopt that way of being in the world?
That's a good question. I don't really know how to answer that. I guess it's been maybe because I've seen the opposite of that so much,
Yeah.
that it's been such a disappointment to see leaders around, even whether it's in politics or sports or all the prime time we see, that it's, to me, it just is such a negative that probably want to correct so far that it sets a different example or tone for other people.
Yeah, one of the things I've always thought is that if you want to be the president, that should automatically disqualify you from being
Yes.
the president.
Yeah, right.
Because there are people that want to get to these leadership positions that they want it for the power, and they want it for all the wrong reasons.
Yes, yeah.
And there are few, that's why I admire you, that's why I wanted to talk to you, is because you're one of the few leaders that is in a leadership position but has maintained that humility and really that servant leader mindset.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think if I could say who modeled that best for me growing up, I always remember the stories about my grandpa Flynn from Kalispell, Montana. He
Yeah.
was a mayor of Kalispell, and I read stories about him. And he told me stories when I was a kid about being mayor, and on Saturdays going out with the chief of police and patching potholes in the streets and stuff like this. And his take on being mayor was it was his duty to provide, be a civic servant for a period of time. So he did it for 6 years, I think. He was a businessman up to that point, very successful. Then he did that, and then he stopped, and he went back to business. And he didn't say that he was mayor because it brought him any sort of satisfaction, but it was something that he felt was a duty to take care of for his town. They needed somebody like him to do that position, and I think if we could get back to that in local politics and things like that, it would be awesome, because I do think, like you're saying, a lot of people pursue roles like that just for notoriety or power, but there's really no good that comes of that for long term. So,
What gets you up in the morning? What keeps you doing this work?
I'd say supporting our team members, just watching them grow, and thinking about my family and my future grandkids and that. Like I said, I have 4 kids. The first one's getting married, but
Yeah.
for me, the motivation I have on a daily basis is when I see people on our team getting promoted or getting opportunity, and seeing kind of fulfilling their lives, whether it be personal, professional, financial, having opportunities to buy new homes, and seeing their kids grow up and go to college and things like that. And so that to me is a big motivator, is to make Cornerstone a place where, eventually I'll unplug from Cornerstone, be gone. It needs to be like I was never there when that happens. And that probably could happen sooner or later. I'm not going to let it, because I love what I'm doing. At the same time, I don't think anybody needs me around on a daily basis to do what they're doing. So,
And I imagine that's a pretty conscious decision to make, to try to make yourself obsolete. Because I think it's so easy for people that are in business and leadership positions they're so in the day to day. If they stopped working 80 hours a week, the whole thing would fall apart.
right.
How have you purposefully divested yourself, so to speak, of the daily operations of the business to where it can run without you?
I think I'm still involved because I want to be in certain areas, but I never put myself where I have to be for it to run. It's more like, where's an area that needs a little bit of extra support right now because they're running lean. Maybe I can plug in and avoid having to hire 3 more people by doing that. But it's just a conscious choice to let people grow and do what they want to do. And there's a certain group of people that are really satisfied and have fulfillment doing a role that's more repetitive and isn't necessarily on a growth track, and we provide those opportunities. And then there's those who are ambitious and need to feed that and really go for growth and those opportunities. And those are the folks that will be the future leaders of the company. And we have several like that already that are involved. And so really, I just work hard on getting out of their way. They know they can depend on me as a resource, and hey, I need to bounce some ideas off you, but they don't need to come to me to get permission or to get told what to do. If anything, I'm gonna come behind them and say, hey, nice job with
Yeah.
that.
I'm going to try to ask this next question without being too controversial, but I think there's a general malaise around my generation, the next generation, feelings of hopelessness, of purposelessness. I think some of it is due to victimhood, feeling like I'm a victim of circumstance. And I think there are true victims in the world, but I think most people that are adopting this victim mindset, they're not true victims.
Right.
What would you say to this next generation? What advice do you have? What have you gleaned that could be helpful for people that are coming up?
This is a tough topic for me, because I agree with you. I see a lot of it, and then I start dwelling on it a little bit, and then I say, well, geez, we can only kind of blame ourselves for this as the older generation, because look at kind of the climate that young people have come up through. They really have never seen or had to live through tough economic times, or I shouldn't say that, because sure, there's a lot of people in the fringes that have had to, but in my world anyway, and what I see. And so I think that I would just say that it's important that I would always, and my kids get to hear this stuff all the time, so apologize to them if they have to watch this, but hard work's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to sweat, and it's a good thing to be uncomfortable. And know what it feels like to not have everything you want within 30 minutes of when you wanted it, or have Amazon drop your dinner at the door, whoever, I don't even know the names of these companies that do this stuff, but it seems like we gotten to a point where we can have anything we want, when we want it, how we want it. We don't have to be patient or work hard for it. There's a satisfaction that comes from hard work. There's a satisfaction that comes from earning something before you buy it. And it's important to always know, and there's a confidence that comes from knowing that you can accomplish things, you can support yourself and your family, you can overcome adversity. The only way you're going to know that is by living it. And so don't shelter yourself from opportunity, don't shelter yourself from hard work. There's choices. You got to make a choice. You got to make a choice to get up early in the morning, get your stuff done, get to work, take care of business, take care of your family, choose not to eat at that fast food restaurant, choose to save rather than spend. Those feel like tough choices, uncomfortable, but I'll tell you what, when you build those muscles, you get super strong in that area, and it's fulfilling. I mean, I've never thought, I can't remember a time in my life when I felt like I couldn't have anything I wanted because I had the ability to work hard, overcome adversity. I always tell everybody, because people ask me, well, how'd you get to be president of the company? And I said, first of all, it's not because I'm smart. I didn't get there because of my brain. I got there because I always was confident that I could outwork anybody. And that's not me bragging about it. That's me having lived the life of being the first guy in, locking the door at night, being there on off hours when nobody else wanted to show up, going through those things. And once you're able to do that, it gives you confidence. I don't feel like I still have to do that, but I'll do it because it's important. It's kind of in my makeup. I think those things are seen as a negative today because there's this saying, it never comes across my lips, but I'll say it here: work-life balance. Those are bad words for me because I feel like that's your personal responsibility to figure what that is for you. Work-life balance isn't something that's my responsibility as your employer to dial in for you. That's really kind of, when we do that to people, we're creating a structure that tells them what it ought to be instead of them figuring out what it needs to be for themselves and for their goals and aspirations. They need to figure that out for themselves. And so I do struggle with this one, and I really push young people around me to say, hey, if you want something, you're going to have to figure out how to get it. And I remember stories. My mom was really good at that. I was raised for a lot of years by a single mother before she remarried. And if I wanted something, it was, well, you'll figure it out if you want it bad enough. And sure enough, she just put that in me. And if I wanted a bike, I'd figure out, paper route, whatever. I'd get that bike, mowing lawns. And so that, I would say it's empowerment for yourself to, if you want something, go earn your way to get that, or work your way. If you want to be ripped, well, go jog and work out, for God's sake. Don't take all these goofy supplements and powders. That's not going to do it for you. So anyway, I'm just going on and on that. But
so how can we be, or learn to be, more resilient? That's one of the things I'm really very conscious of with my son, is teaching him resilience, even at 18 months old. It's like, you're going to fall, and you can get up on your own.
Right.
Let him take risks that are appropriate risks for an 18-month-old, but I don't want to be that parent that's, oh, are you okay? And always picking him up. And it's like, no, you can fall down, you can get back up on your own. How can we teach, maybe it's our own children, maybe it's this next generation, maybe it's ourselves. How can we become more resilient? How can we become comfortable with discomfort? Or how can we seek discomfort in order to grow as people?
Good question, and I don't have all the answers. For me, I would say that is one is don't focus on numbing yourself from reality. And that's one thing our society has done, is whether it's through social media or alcohol, drugs, and all that. It's okay to have a beer here and there. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is, if you're needing those things to not deal with tough things,
Right.
then that's not okay. But I do also think we have a lot of pity parties,
Yeah.
in our current society, and a lot of helicopter parents, and protecting everybody from everything. That's how we you kind of decide who's got it and who doesn't by who's been through and knows not to stick your hand on the burner. Well, how do you learn that? It used to be, and I'm not saying this is okay, but it used to be parents would, hey, see, oh yeah, okay, they'll never touch that again, right?
Yeah.
But now instead we're gonna come up with all kinds of ways never to let your kid have any suffering at all. So I would say, for me, is don't have pity parties for people. If they've created a situation for themselves, they need to fix it and learn through that. And I'm not saying you can't give somebody a pat on the back or a hug or a, hey, I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm not talking about that at all. But I think in general, we're being we're protecting people from learning what it takes to grow that strength by putting padding around them all the time. They need to be given the freedom to fail.
Yeah.
Really.
How can we get more comfortable with failure?
I think I'm not sure how to answer that. Let me think about how to answer that. Comfortable with failure. I mean, it's funny because you kind of see failure as an embarrassment.
Right.
But is that because you're so focused on yourself that, where are you with yourself? Because I fail every day a lot of times, and so you got to be able to laugh it off or whatever. So I think it's okay. You got to understand it's okay to fail as long as you had the right intentions in the failure and the right mindset. And so if you were working hard and for the right reasons for the right things, that's a good failure to have. If you were doing something stupid, that's different.
One of the concepts I've come up with recently that's been helpful for me is I call it my council of elders. So there are people that are in my life that are real. It could be fictional characters. It could be people I know. It could be people, authors I don't know. But I think about decisions I need to make, and I think, what would that person tell me to do? So, you picture a conference room table, maybe it's 8 people. Who would be some of those people for you in your life that has really given you that wise counsel when you needed it? And maybe tell me about, how have they been able to offer you wisdom in your life, if there are people like that for you?
That's a good question. That's a tough one too.
I'm not asking the easy questions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my grandfathers were a big influence on me. So my grandpa Jack was one, and my grandpa Tom was the other, and I named my boys Jack and Tom. They'd definitely be there because I look back at even getting interested in building and carpentry. And my grandpa Jack was a carpenter, and he taught me a lot just being around him. And so, like I said, my folks got divorced when I was just 1 or 2 years old, and so really my grandfathers were a big influence on me. So they'd definitely be there. My other grandfather, the mayor, he was a CPA, accountant, business, kind of ran his own businesses. And then Grandpa Jack, the carpenter, just very mechanically inclined, good with his hands. He could build anything. Taught me from the time I was a little kid. I'd go work with him doing remodels for all his daughters and my aunts and things like this. So those 2 guys would be there for sure. I would say, it'd be hard. I don't want to leave anybody off that list, so I'm not going to put anybody more on that list because, I've had a lot of people, mentors and great influences on me, but I'm also wired to be, I have to learn by doing. I'm not somebody who's that teachable. I have to teach myself the lessons I've learned, and so I've probably been really frustrating for older people who've tried to pour into me because they're like, "Hey, you're not getting it." So that's been my experience.
What do you think about the question of purpose and meaning in life? Because I think on one hand, there are people, you know, that maybe it's my generation, maybe it's the generation behind me that thinks about, I don't have a sense of purpose, I feel purposeless. Do we need to feel completely fulfilled and like we have a purpose in our work? Can our work just be our work and we find purpose in other areas? How do you think about your purpose?
That's a good question because there's a lot of business um, people like Simon Sinek and others who really are big on purpose,
Right.
the why, and that. And I think there is validity there because if you don't have a sense of purpose on why you're doing something, you're probably not going to be passionate about doing it. But that doesn't mean it's not okay to do work that doesn't bring you that, right? Because you got to pay the bills too. So it's nice if, yeah, I think business people like, again, Simon, when he's talking about these massive corporations. It's a little bit different. But I think purpose is important, and I do think there is a lack of purpose in a lot of people. And when you have that, and there's times I've gone through wondering why am I doing this? And you ask yourself those things. And I usually find when I'm in that mode, I'm in the pity party side and I'm thinking about myself too much.
Yeah.
As soon as you start thinking about other people, you will find your sense of purpose. If you're too inward thinking, you will lack purpose. And so whether it's your religion fulfills that for a lot of people, or whether it's other things, I would just say for me, if I focus on other people and their needs and supporting them, my purpose is solved immediately. We have a young man, Stephen, that works at our office. I think you've met him maybe.
I think so.
Anyway, he's disabled young man.
Oh, yes, I have met him. Yeah.
Yeah, great young man. But I think about people like that, and it clarifies purpose in a hurry when you have people around you like that showing you what really matters.
Yeah.
And so that would be my advice to anybody who's stuck not finding purpose is, well, quit having a pity party and quit caring about your own needs so much. And
Yeah.
pretty soon what you'll find is focusing on others fulfills you in a way that it's really a self gratifying thing to do, but you don't realize it until you're able to kind of do it in hindsight a little bit. And so, does that make sense?
Yes, it's kind of a roundabout way of finding that purpose where
Yeah.
you stop thinking about, me, all about
Right.
me. You think about others, and then that ends up being the thing that does fulfill you.
Fulfills you. And the other thing I'd say, and I see this a lot with young people, but envy. Having envy or jealousy for other people. So a lot of young people, oh, my buddy's working for, Amazon as a computer guy making 100 and whatever a year, and here I am making this, and just having envy. What good is that? Again, pity party. That's, if you want to make a 150 year being a computer program, go get that degree and do it.
Yeah.
Quit complaining about your buddy who's doing
Yeah.
it. So I think that's the other thing that tends to get people in a bad way is just being envious of what other people are doing rather than taking the initiative to do what they want to do and accomplish.
Yeah, there aren't shortcuts. Do you think there are shortcuts in life?
I would say no real shortcuts. There's temporary shortcuts. So, for example, somebody who knows somebody who got you an opportunity and didn't have to go through the same hurdles to get that. So those are shortcuts that might bring you short-term financial gain or short-term job opportunity, but it's always going to come around, meaning that's not going to last forever, or if you got the job, you may fail in it because you really weren't ready for that opportunity. And So I would say there's no long-term shortcuts that'll sustain themselves, but at the same time, it's okay to be opportunistic.
Yeah.
I mean, going through a hard process is healthy, but if you see opportunity and a door's open, boy, you need to be ready to take opportunity that comes your way. Otherwise, well, why wouldn't you? Unless it comes with strings attached. That's one thing I always tell people. A lot of things that seem like shortcuts or opportunities come with strings attached. You really need to understand those before you decide to take them. Because sometimes those strings will surface a year or two later, and then you're like, oh, wish I wouldn't have done that,
Yeah.
So,
Men in general are struggling in today's world, whether it's rates of suicide, whether it is college attendance, educational attainment, mental health. What would you say to men who are in their 20s and their 30s? What advice would you have for them?
I'd probably say it's okay to be a man. It's okay, it's okay to do man things. I think society has kind of stripped males down to, there's been a lot of programming done to say, it's not okay to do certain things as a man, and I think men need to understand that, we're wired a certain way, and it's okay to be that way. It doesn't mean it's okay to ever disrespect a female. It doesn't mean it's okay to go around, hurting people. I'm not talking about necessarily masculinity as it relates to beating your chest, but it's essential to, if you're a man and you don't make excuses for yourself. You need to own it. Be responsible. Be a leader for your family and your community and your neighbors. And you got to be ready to provide and protect. I mean, I see that as my number one role, is to protect my family and provide for them. It doesn't mean my wife wouldn't do the same thing if she needed to, if I was sick or had cancer or something. But I guess I'm not trying to make this a gender issue so much, but I agree with you that there is a lot of messaging that's been going on for a long time that, especially Caucasian males are poisonous. They got all these problems. It's like, well, okay, get over it and get back to work.
Yeah. Because I think there needs to be, I think we can all point out there's unhealthy versions of how men act.
Yeah.
But then what is the healthy version of masculinity, and what does that look like? Because it can't just be don't do all of this stuff. There has to be a vision that's an alternative.
Well, what is the
vision.
alternative?
Yeah.
And you're probably right. They're not, we're not seeing enough of that alternative vision.
Yeah.
What that is, and a lot of people need better examples in the home to see what that is. So, are you asking me what that is?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Thoughts on it?
Well, it's funny because it was easy for me growing up because I already told you about my grandfathers, and so I saw that, and that's kind of, my father, not so much on that area because he had some challenges that, in that, I would say, in fulfilling his duties and role, and so. Where would a young person go today to find that? And it's funny because everybody spends so much time on their cell phones doing little video clips of things, and they're not really seeing that probably in those areas, or it's how that manifests itself is through extreme activities, right? That doing things on the extreme. And so I would say being steady, knowing who you are, standing up for the right thing, just being steady. Your family, your neighbors, whatever it is, whoever you're around needs to know you're going to be there every day. You're going to be the same person you were yesterday, tomorrow, and you're going to stand up for the right things. I'm having a hard time verbalizing this, I have an image in my head of what that looks like.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the things that society would say.
Right. Right.
You have to be able to lay on a board of nails. No.
And shoot a gun while you're riding a horse.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. By definition, I've been thinking about this as I've been trying to reach for bigger projects, work with bigger clients. And by definition, you've not done something if you're shooting for something bigger because you've not done it, right? You might have done something similar to it on a smaller level, but if you're growing, if you're challenging yourself, you haven't done that thing yet. How can you, or how have you been comfortable with continuing to strive for more? Maybe it's bigger projects, maybe it's having a bigger team. What has been your process for that?
For me, it's how you look at risk. I mean, some people are risk takers that saying no risk it, no biscuit.
Yeah.
I think that holds true for me. I mean, I have found where, again, it comes to opportunity. I don't like passing up on opportunity, and and because I have always had confidence that I can outwork everybody, and I know our team can. I've never seen an opportunity for growth as a bad thing. You have to be smart, though. If you think for any reason you can't deliver, then you have to be careful with that, because that's the kiss of death for a business, right? Is not delivering something on time, on budget, whatever the commitment being made is. So, but if you have confidence in your ability to weather the storm, get through anything, then take those risks, because it's going to stretch you. You're going to grow, and you'll be able to step up. Don't do too many at a time. If your normal size job is this job's, have 3 or 4 of those going, and then take one that's this big.
Yeah.
That'll stretch you, and then pretty soon all your jobs will be this size, and you'll take one that's this big. So, and we go through this all the time, where we do a lot of jobs that are huge jobs, and then, well, let's get into a different market and try a different, get work in this other sector. Well, we know that's going to take us to this size job till we can demonstrate our acumen, our capability. And our model for growth has always been, let's have our clients take us to this job, because they're comfortable, they want us, they know it's a stretch job, but they want us. Well, that's a perfect situation to stretch yourself. You got a customer who wants you, and then so you don't have to overcome the criteria of, are you qualified? Because they already know it's a stretch job, but they want you.
Yeah.
So if you're going for bigger jobs and you're trying to establish qualification to win, that's a tougher road. And we've been there before too, that says, haven't worked for this owner, hey, isn't this job a little too big for you? Or we don't see this kind of job on your resume. You have to be very confident. And first you have to be so confident that you can perform, that comes across to that client. Don't just be going for it for the, hey, look at what we got this big job. It has to be a totally serious effort where you can demonstrate, here's our plan, here's how we're going to execute. And then when you get it, you got to overperform. And so those are your opportunities that you have to, take risk and see those through, for sure.
How have you gotten comfortable with risk, or has that been something that's always been part of who you are?
I think it's a little bit a part of who I am. That is some of the, I'd say, rewards of success too, is that you can take risk, and okay, if it fails, we'll get over it pretty quick from a financial standpoint. But I've just been comfortable with risk, knowing who I am, what I'm capable of, and who our team is and what they're capable of. And believe me, if there has been projects that come along where I'm just like, you know what, we're not going to touch that one. Not good time for us, or the team I need on that isn't available right now. And so you have to be smart, but to me, it's like if risk taking versus risk adverse, I would say most companies that grow on a scale of 1 to 10 are probably a 7 or 8 on the risk taking area. And so we kind of live in that category too.
I should have asked you this at the beginning, but this is my first one. But what does quiet excellence mean to you?
Well, quiet excellence is being really good at what you do, but not talking about it, right? I mean, that's really what it is. It's for me, the vision I have is I go back to when I was working in the field, and for maybe it was a couple of months I was working as a hottie, which is in the masonry. I was working with this mason, this old time mason. He was Ron Versino. He was Italian, really good mason, just incredible. And I was his hottie, so I would take care of his needs. I'd bring him his materials, and all he was doing is laying block. And I'd spend all day working with this guy, and he had no wasted movement or motion. Everything he did was on purpose, and it was, I'm not going to say perfect, but as perfect as masonry could ever be, okay? Yeah. Where he'd take his trowel and he'd slide the mortar on, one slide, two slide, and it was always just perfect amount of mortar, and then he'd put the block in there, put it in, grab the next block. I mean, there's no wasted motion, very fluent, very productive, very safe, never broke a sweat. And then you'd look over to the side here where maybe there was another trade people working in, literally mess everywhere, stuff falling down, people yelling at each other, no planning or thought. And to me, the image of quiet excellence was Ron, watching him work. And so that it was important. And it is important to us as a company to get to a place in our craft that we have quiet excellence. And so if you're an owner building a building, you know, you would appreciate having somebody there who's just quiet and goes about the work and does high quality work and delivers it to you and it's done. And then you look across the street and this other contractor is building it and shit's everywhere and they're 3 months late, and you look at it and the things aren't plumb or square. And so that's what that means to me, is very fluid, very quiet, calm, steady, kind of like when I've used this image with people before. Like I remember when I was a little kid, we'd go boating with my Grandpa Jack, in his canoe. And we'd get in the canoe, and I'm a little kid, I'm so excited, I just want to start paddling, and the lake's nice and calm, I start paddling, and the boat's going like this, and there's all these waves, right? And then Grandpa Jack, he'd say, no, Davy. He'd call me Davy. Not like this, like this. And then he'd start paddling, nice and calm, right? Very quiet, not a ripple in the water when he did it. And so to me, that's kind of the image of quiet excellence, is just nice, calm, steady, and achieving the result you're looking for.
Well, it seems like it involves mastery as well. That the master does not, right? Whether it's a mason or whether it's a swimmer, no amount of effort is wasted.
Right. No, that's a good way of putting it. Get it, all your effort is focused. And when you do that, you're not expending 100 to do, really only needs 50, but now you could do 50, do it faster and go further and do it right. That's to me was the differentiator. Is and this Ron guy we're talking about, when he was done for the day, he wasn't wearing his work. He was clean, He looked like he could have just walked out of the lumberyard picking up a delivery. So I just always remember that, working with him, and that to me is the manifestation of quiet excellence.
Speaking of wearing our work, a lot of us work not in the field, but a lot of us work with our minds now. How can those that do work with our minds, that we could be working all the time, theoretically, how can we learn to not take our work home with us or not wear our work home? How can we say, okay, when I close the office door, I'm done, I'm going home to my family, I'm going to be present with them?
Boy, that's that's a tough question for me because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
So I think it's, again, being present, um, prioritizing what's important at that time for yourself. Because and I see it some in young people and even in some of my kids for that matter, where I'm not going to call it ADD, but it's almost there, right? Where they can carry on a conversation and be scrolling through their phone, looking at their social feed or whatever's going on in that phone.
Yeah.
And then if there's ever a quiet time of more than 5-10 minutes, the phone's right there. It's rare to see a young person not engaged in technology while they're awake. So I think that's a problem facing us today and in the future of how to that's kind of an addiction, I would say, that's going on. And I'm not going to say I don't do the same thing once in a while, but I'm the guy who can forget my cell phone at home and then it's noon and I'm like, oh, where the hell's my cell phone?
Yeah.
Hasn't buzzed once. So I doubt most young people could go more than 5 minutes without
Yeah.
knowing where their cell phone is.
Yeah, there are those reports that tell you how many times you checked it a day, and
Yeah,
you realize I've checked my phone 140 times. There's no need to do that.
yeah, exactly.
One of the things that it kind of cracks me up, I was looking for because you gave me a very kind testimonial. I was looking for a headshot of you online, and I couldn't find Dave Flynn anywhere.
That's a good thing.
Has that been has that been a conscious choice to stay off of social media to do? Because this was part of the inspiration for this conversation is you're somebody that is not concerned with the talking about the doing. You're not posting on LinkedIn or whatever it is. You're not talking about all the stuff you're doing. You're just too busy with the doing to talk about it.
Yeah. Hasn't really been conscious, but it's also, I would say, almost vile to me to think about doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is fine for me because I really respect you
Oh,
and
thank
what
you.
you're doing here.
Yeah.
I might think differently about it when I see it,
Did you
but
see it?
like, don't post that anywhere. But yeah, I mean, the whole selfie thing and just look what I'm eating for dinner. It just seems so self-absorbed to me
Yeah.
that probably some of the way I do things like that is like a complete, like if that's where everybody is, I got to go way over here because I can't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's probably part of it. I didn't know I had such a light footprint on the internet, but I'm glad actually. I mean, hopefully my record from when I was a teenager is not on there somewhere, but yeah.
So there are people that have difficult upbringings in their past. Maybe they have, yeah, maybe it's a checkered past. Maybe they, like you, raised by a single mother. Um, Maybe they didn't grow up with a lot. And some people turn that hardship into something really great. It becomes motivating for them. For other people, it becomes debilitating and
Yeah.
they cannot move forward with their life. For you, having, I don't know a lot about your story, but it doesn't sound like there was, a ton of wealth in the home. How did you use that to motivate yourself? How did you not let that become something that's debilitating, but you use that as, it seems like, as fuel to continue to make yourself be somebody who's driven?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I had a really good upbringing, so I don't take anything I
Sure.
said wrong.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have
Yeah.
what I had. Um, if you think you're the only person who's had it tough, something's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
Again, you're really being selfish in the moment to say, "Oh boy, I had this kind of dad or this kind of mom, or didn't have any money in the family." There's places that you will you will all of a sudden feel really blessed.
Yeah.
And so, um, what's that? And I'm not a theologian at all time much at all, but I always remember that. But for the grace of God, go I. The reason I know that is I was helping build a church a long time ago, and the pastor I was talking to one day, we were going to a meeting with the architect, and he told me the story because we passed somebody on the side of the freeway who was panhandling at the exit, and he unrolled his window and he gave him a $5 bill or something. And he told me the story how he saw somebody like that and didn't give them money one time, and he was embarrassed for them, feeling like, well, how can they go get a job, go do something, right? And then he said, then he remembered that passage, but for the grace of God go I. And I always think about that from the standpoint of when I want to feel sorry for myself, God, I'm having a rough day, I have a bad headache or my hip or whatever it is. It's like, man, I got it easy. And I think most of us do, because there's always somebody who's got a tougher
Yeah.
hill to climb, like Stephen.
Yeah.
He didn't pick his situation,
Yeah.
right? A lot of us didn't, if you had a tough upbringing as a kid, you didn't pick your situation, but you're an adult now.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So that I think is very important, that we all, to the degree we have, we're not like Stephen. We make a decision and a choice if we're going to let that define us and live in that pity, because that is self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
People who live in that, or it's almost like you go there to feel good, even though it's making you feel bad. So why
Yeah.
go there?
Yeah.
It's a choice. And
Yeah.
so I don't think for me, there's nothing in my upbringing that was negative that would drive me, other than, like I told you the story about my mom, I think earlier, which is, hey, if you want it, you better figure it out.
Yeah.
And that probably more than anything gave me a sense of, once I figured it out the first time, the second time, I'm like, hey, it's not that hard to go get what you want. I've told my kids that all the time. I mean, in this country, you can be whatever you want to be if you're willing to work hard enough. Yeah. And, I told my kids, hey, I got this extra pressure washer here. You could go make yourself a millionaire with a pressure washer in this country.
Yeah.
What's stopping you?
Yeah.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think America, obviously, a lot of things wrong, a lot of things we should continue to work on, but there's a reason why people are trying to get here.
Yeah.
It's because opportunity exists here.
Exactly. It does.
How would you say we can work on the right things? Because I think we've covered work hard, but how can we make sure we're working hard on the right stuff?
I mean, it's important to have a vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody who's trying to, if you're just going through motions, but you're not sure why, or you're lacking the purpose, I mean, have a vision. If you can't visualize it, you're probably never going to get there. You don't know what it looks like. If you know, I always talk to our superintendents and I say, do you know what done looks like? Have you seen it? I mean, a good superintendent knows what done looks like before you even break ground on that job. He's built it in his head. He knows what done looks like. And if you know what that looks like, you'll navigate there. I don't know why it always happens that way. And so for me, having a vision of what it is that you're striving for is important. And if I don't have that, that's when I get into funks where I'm like, what am I doing? What are we doing? And then boom, as soon as I lock in on a vision, now that's where we're headed. And it's really powerful for me. And so I would say, anybody can do that. And if you can't do that, then you're focusing on the wrong things. You'll know when it's the right thing, and then you'll lock in, and you will go, and you'll fail and you'll struggle, but you'll keep going. And so have yourself get a vision, and it's not like sit down and it's going to happen. It'll come to you. It takes time, but you have to put yourself in a place where you're open to receiving those visions too.
How important has it been for you to surround yourself with the right people?
Oh, incredible. Yeah, that is so important. I mean, if you don't have that, then it's a lot tougher road. And you need the right people around you. They need to be treated very special, and they need to know how important they are to not only your ability to do what you do, but to the whole organization, because they're few and far between. And so when you're able to identify somebody like that, or multiple people, like I'm fortunate enough to not, I shouldn't say have, but to be around, to get to work with, you have to really appreciate them in a way that they want to be there and they see the reciprocal benefit for them. So it's huge importance, and you can't, that again, I keep throwing cliches out there, but alone you go fast, together you go far, or as a team you go far. That's held true for me many times. I always tell you, I can work super hard, I can outwork anybody, I can go fast, but I'm not going to go very far that way.
Yeah, my 30s has been my year of realizing that every cliche is true.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then our final question, how do you want to be remembered?
Boy, that's a tough one because that's not how my mind works, Um, how do I want to be remembered? I mean, obviously, as an excellent father, husband, provider, but uh, I think when it comes to the business and the community is just, I think about people I've known that have passed away or whatever, as just from the standpoint of that was a rock solid person who, did the right thing, was always there when he needed to be, they never doubted his integrity or why he was doing what he was doing. Um, you know, Workaholic. Yeah. And I would say, for me, you have to wear your heart on your sleeve or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Probably people would argue that, well, you don't do that. I think I do. You should wear your heart on your sleeve. Because if you can't be vulnerable, or stand up for something, get angry when it needs to be anger because somebody's picking on somebody or whatever it is. I'd rather be the guy who wore his heart on the sleeve and, went to the mat for the right things than the guy who just, you wondered where he stood on certain things. It's better to be clear. Even if you're wrong sometimes, it's okay, right? If somebody knows that, boy, that guy, if somebody did wronged his family or his friends or his kids, boy, I wouldn't want to do that to that guy.
Yeah.
That's who I want to be.
Yeah.
That's important, I think. And I think if you would ask my kids, they know that, they know not to do wrong themselves. Don't want to cross dad that way, but they also know that if they were ever need something because they weren't being treated the right way, that I'll be the first one there. And I think that's important. That's how I want to be remembered.
Well said. Dave, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This is fun.
Fun.